Welcome to Financial Insider Weekly. I'm your host, Michael Gray, CPA. My guest today is also a CPA. His name is Bill Mitchell, and he represents taxpayers in IRS collections, audits, and appeals. Bill is headquartered in Capitola, and he also has an office in San Jose here in California. And he has also been licensed to practice before the United States Tax Court since 1978. He graduated from Santa Clara University in 1962, and then after his service in the U.S. Army, he worked at the Internal Revenue Service from 1966 to 1971, and then he's worked in public accounting from 1971 to the present. And in his alter ego, Bill plays amateur baseball with the National Senior Baseball League. So, Bill, thank you very much for being my guest today and joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, it's a pleasure. So today, I've asked Bill to provide some guidance about what to do if you're audited by the IRS, and I guess you could also say by the Franchise Tax Board when you're here in California. In other words, how to handle a tax audit. And so he has a lot of experience in that area. I actually feel that it's a pleasure to have him here, particularly to capture some of that experience. As you can see, Bill's been with us for a while. Like I said, he's been working in public accounting since 1971. How much longer he's going to do this, I don't know.
Until he put a lily on my chest.
Okay.
It does mean I'm old, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
So anyway, bear in mind we're covering highlights of a very complex subject, and there are people like Bill who specialize in this area for a reason, and so we want you to consult with a qualified tax advisor about your situation. So with that, let's get started with some of our questions.
Sure.
Okay, Bill. Oh my gosh, I just got a letter from the IRS. Should I panic?
Well, it's okay to panic. I would say that most of the people that that have contacted me do feel a sense of uneasiness. You can't help but feel that, even though you've done your best to report everything and believe that you've filed an honest tax return. Mm-hmm. That's just human nature.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Actually, most of the letters that people get don't even require a meeting with an IRS agent, do they?
Not necessarily. You can get what's called a letter audit, where they're asking for documents to be submitted. And you have to be careful with that because those are called correspondence audits. And they may start with a letter generated from Austin, Texas to a taxpayer in California, and that you respond to that letter with the documents, and you might receive the next response from an IRS office in Cincinnati. It's a strange animal, and the thing that I would caution on is that many times when they request documents, that all the documents that they request be submitted, because what appears to be a relatively innocent request can snowball. And I've had occasions where other CPA practitioners have contacted me when they've been involved with letter audits that their clients have received, and all of a sudden the documentation that they're requesting becomes voluminous. Mm-hmm. And at that point, it might be better to request that the audit be transferred to a field examination in the area where the taxpayer resides.
Yeah. What I find, and may have to do with the types of tax returns that I'm involved with, because I work quite a bit with people with like employee stock options and so forth. And so quite often, again, the IRS is trying to match to documents. Mm-hmm. And so they're having trouble following, and for example, a very common error is that people exercise a stock option, they'll report, they know the income's on their W-2 for a non-qualified stock option, and so they don't bother to put the sale on their Schedule D, the capital gains and loss schedule, which basically would show a wash, usually zero or a very small loss. And so now the IRS is trying, they've got the report of the sale, and they're saying, what happened? You know, you didn't report some income here. And so quite often, when I do get calls from these people, they are sort of sweating bullets.
Right. Well, and you also, I've had clients where they've questioned interest deductions, and that can be a little more involved than just a straightforward answer because of the limitations on claiming interest deductions.
Yeah, well, and that's something, that's an area that, first of all, a lot of tax practitioners seem to overlook is applying limitations, and the second is that most taxpayers don't really have a clue about how they work. So we won't get into that in detail today.
All right. Okay.
All right, so when somebody gets a letter like this, I think their response may be, why me?
Right. You probably never really know why. It could be because the IRS has a random selection. It could be that they have a program going on. Right now, they've issued audit tax guidelines, and it's really interesting. This just happened in August for attorneys, consultants, and cash-intensive businesses such as beauty parlors, coin-operated laundromats, that type of thing. So you'll never know for sure why me, but nevertheless, you should get beyond that and respond.
Right. Okay. So now another question that people will commonly ask is, how do I decide if I should handle the audit myself or if I should get help?
That's a good question. If it's just to send in a document, I think that the taxpayer can handle that all by themselves. But if it gets beyond that, and this is where most of the time I get involved, is where clients will respond, and then all of a sudden they've reached an impasse in either the communications or understanding of what's taking place, and that's where a client should get professional help.
Mm-hmm. So part of what we're talking about here, and what I found in working with clients and the IRS and so forth, is the IRS has a particular kind of language, if you will. You've got to speak IRS. And so, so people like ourselves that are dealing with tax issues all the time and understand things about documentation, and that's sort of the specialty of the CPA, by the way.
Right.
We speak the language, and so we can help in that communication with the IRS.
Right. That's one of the single biggest things is communication and responding to the IRS.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. So there's another thing. This is actually relates to an experience that I had, and I was actually dealing with another friend who is an attorney that also deals with the IRS on audit issues and so forth, a little bit like you do. But in this particular case, the IRS was getting pretty, I don't know how to put it, kind of nasty or whatever. I mean, basically what we were dealing with in this case was the client didn't really want to meet with the IRS agent. And also we were trying to control where the agent was going to have access to information. We were going to provide all the documents that they needed, but it was going to be in my office. And they wanted to go out, of course, to the client's location. And as far, we didn't object to them just to go and look at the location, but as far as, you know, in this particular case, because it involved cash reporting, you know, where you'd be required, if you get cash payments of more than $10,000, to provide a report to the IRS. Well, this is actually a very sensitive area. I mean, there are criminal, potentially criminal charges. This involved an auto dealership. So anyway, so when the agent gave me a lot of grief, finally I felt that I needed to bring an attorney in, because they could say, okay, here's what your rights are, and so forth, and to be a little more insistent. And I found that sometimes it helps to have a hired gun for doing that.
True.
So I don't know if you maybe have a comment about that.
Well, that's true. If you feel like you're getting into a situation where it's not, your full field of expertise. I mean, we all do that. In areas where I don't have a feeling of great confidence that I'm fully knowledgeable about everything in an area, then I seek help as well. That's always a good policy.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the other thing is, how does this feel like it's progressing? What kinds of questions is the agent asking? Because, and in some respects, this is where you'd also have an advantage by having a representative that's familiar with it, because they can be sensitive to the direction that the audit is going. And again, even, I know that you're a CPA that deals in this area, but I'm sure there are situations where you feel like, oh, I need to get an attorney involved in this.
Right, you're correct. For example, I recently had a case that where there was a substantial omission of income by the client, and so in those instances, just to protect the client, you call in an attorney to work with you, and there's a procedure under which you come under the cloak of the attorney for privilege, and it's called the Covell procedure. That name arose from a tax court proceeding, and that way you can continue to represent the client and be the client's best friend, as opposed to being the client's worst enemy by the information that you're finding out. But it is I think, a good protective measure, even though nothing may ever come of it. It's strictly an audit that's going to result in an adjustment where the client may pay some tax and possibly a penalty, but it doesn't go beyond that to any criminal proceedings.
Yeah. Okay. Some people might wonder, if I bring a representative, won't the IRS think that I have something to hide?
No, absolutely not. In fact, the IRS has a publication out called Publication 1, which enumerates all the taxpayers' Bill of Rights, and that's right in the Bill of Rights, is that a taxpayer has the right to a representation before the IRS, and usually the representatives will execute what's called a power of attorney with the client, which means that now you're speaking on behalf of the client to the IRS, and the professions that can represent are attorneys, CPAs, actuaries, and there's a new animal out called registered preparers, and they can represent clients at the audit level, but a registered preparer cannot go beyond the audit level, so that if there's an impasse at the audit level and you're going forward, then you're going to need a CPA or an attorney. And I don't want to leave out enrolled agents.
Right.
Also,
right.
They're also very qualified to represent in tax examinations.
Right. And people who are enrolled agents typically have a lot of experience working at the IRS.
Right. Well, their whole field is strictly in tax expertise.
Right.
So I don't want to leave them out by any measure.
Right. All right. So you sort of covered my next question, but anyway, we'll just move along. Okay. So let's say I started this audit myself, or with a tax return preparer helping me. We talked a little bit around this, but at what point then should I seek additional help?